have at least one, and many had more. Highly politicized minorities. As such, ethnic tension and movement have become a major source of violent and non-violent conflicts. If around the world so many multi-ethnic states are in trouble, it is obvious they have their need to understand the cause behind these movements and their nature and type. ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ୟୁନାଇଟେଡ୍ ନେସନ୍ସ ଅର୍ଗାନାଇଜେସନ ଅଣ୍ଡରରେ ପାଖାପାଖି 194 କଣ୍ଟ୍ରିଜ ଗୁଡ଼ିକ ରେଜିଷ୍ଟ୍ରେସନ ଭୁକ୍ତ କରିଛନ୍ତି ହେଲା ସେଥିରୁ 150 ଦେଶ ଗୁଡ଼ିକରେ ପାଖାପାଖି ଏଥନିକ ଗ୍ରୁପ ବା ମୂଳ ବାସିନ୍ଦା ବାସ କରୁଛନ୍ତି ସେମାନଙ୍କ ଜୀବନ ଏବେ ବିପଦପୂର୍ଣ୍ଣ କାହିଁକି ନା ସେମାନେ ଯେଉଁ ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରରେ ଅବସ୍ଥାନ କରିଛନ୍ତି ସେ ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ର ସେମାନଙ୍କୁ ପ୍ରକୃତ ନାଗରିକତା ପ୍ରଦାନ କରିପାରୁନାହିଁ ସେମାନଙ୍କର ଭାଷାକୁ ମଧ୍ୟ ସ୍ୱୀକୃତି ଦେଉନାହିଁ ସେମାନଙ୍କର କଲଚରକୁ ସ୍ୱୀକୃତି ଦେଉନାହିଁ ସେମାନେ ନେଚର ଲ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ ଯୋଉ ରହିଛନ୍ତି ଜଳ ଜମି ଜଙ୍ଗଲ ଦ ମେନ୍ ଫ୍ୟାକ୍ଟର ଅଫ ଦ ଜଳ ଜମି ଜଙ୍ଗଲ ଇଜ ଇସ୍ୟୁଜ ଇନ୍ ଏ ନାଉ ଡେଜ୍ ତେଣୁ ମୂଳବାସୀ ମାନେ ଯୋଉ ଜଳ ଜମି ଜଙ୍ଗଲ ତାଙ୍କର ପ୍ରକୃତି ମାକୁ ଭଲ ପାଉଛନ୍ତି ତେଣୁ ଆଧୁନିକ ମଣିଷ ସେସବୁ ତାଙ୍କଠାରୁ ଛଡେଇ ନଥିବାରୁ ସେମାନେ ଉଗ୍ର ରୂପ କରିଛନ୍ତି ମିଷ୍ଟର ଗୌର ତାଙ୍କ ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚରେ ସେ କହିଛନ୍ତି ଯେ ପାଖାପାଖି 233ଟି ଗ୍ରୁପ ସେଥିରୁ 27ଟା ମାଇନରିଟି ଗ୍ରୁପ ଯାହାକି ପାଖାପାଖି 12% ଯେ ଯୋଉ ଏଥନିକ ଗ୍ରୁପ ଅଛନ୍ତି ସେମାନଙ୍କ ଜୀବନ ବଡ ବିପଦପୂର୍ଣ୍ଣ ଅଛି ସେମାନଙ୍କର ଗ୍ରୁପକୁ ସ୍ୱୀକୃତି ଦିଆଯାଉ ନାହିଁ ସେମାନେ ସେଥିପାଇଁ ନ୍ୟାସନାଲ ସ୍ୱୀକୃତି ପାଇବା ପାଇଁ ଆନ୍ଦୋଳନର ପନ୍ଥାକୁ ବାଛିଛନ୍ତି ତେଣୁ ଆଜି ଆମେ ସେ ପଢିବା ଏଥନିକ ଗ୍ରୁପ ମାନଙ୍କର ଆନ୍ଦୋଳନ ବିଷୟରେ ତାଙ୍କର ଦାବି ପାଇଁ ସେମାନଙ୍କର ହକ୍ ପାଇଁ ସେମାନେ କିପରି ଆନ୍ଦୋଳନ କରିଛନ୍ତି ଏହି ଆନ୍ଦୋଳନ ପାଇଁ କେତେଗୁଡିଏ ଫ୍ୟାକ୍ଟର ଅଛି ଫ୍ୟାକ୍ଟର୍ସ ରେସ୍ପନ୍ସିବଲ ଫର ଏଥନିକ ମୁଭମେଣ୍ଟ ଫାର୍ଷ୍ଟ ୱାନ୍ ଇଜ modernization and ethnic modernization in the operational sense modernization means the attainment of relatively higher levels of variables such as education per capita income urbanization political participation industrial employment media participation etc as already stated in early modernizing theory, ethnic identity referred to traditional obstacles with other supposed to disappear in course of development. However, the experience of the last decades has shown that these theories of progressive integration of people were seriously flawed. While to begin with there was such developments and modernization, but in uniformity, but in the course of time. In advanced industrial societies, particularly modernization appears to lead to a personality level, which is also termed by the some as alienation and by others simply as rootlessness. In fact, alienation may arise from the work situation, the impersonalization of a bureaucratized, formalized, and urbanized existence within the framework of an existence centralized state power structure. ଆଧୁନିକୀକରଣ ହେବା ଦ୍ୱାରା ମୂଳ ବାସିନ୍ଦା ମାନେ ସେମାନଙ୍କ ଜୀବନ ପ୍ରତି ବିପଦ ସୃଷ୍ଟି ହେଉଛି ଏହାର କାରଣ ହେଉଛି ମୂଳ ବାସିନ୍ଦା ଲୋକମାନେ ସେମାନେ ଜଙ୍ଗଲ ପାହାଡ ପ୍ରାକୃତିକ ପରିବେଶକୁ ଭଲ ପାଆନ୍ତି ସେମାନେ ସହରକୁ କେବେ ଭଲ ପାଆନ୍ତି ନାହିଁ ସେହି କାରଣରୁ ସେମାନେ ଜଙ୍ଗଲ ପାହାଡ ଛାଡି ସଭ୍ୟତାକୁ ଆସିପାରନ୍ତି ନାହିଁ ଅନ୍ୟ ଏକ ଦୃଷ୍ଟିରୁ ଲୋକ ସଂଖ୍ୟା ବୃଦ୍ଧି ହେବାରୁ ଶିଳ୍ପ ବୃଦ୍ଧି ହେଉଛି କଲୋନୀର ବୃଦ୍ଧି ପାଉଛି ତେଣୁ ମଡର୍ଣ୍ଣ ଲୋକମାନେ ସେଇ ଆଦିମ ଅଧିବାସୀ ରହୁଥିବା ଜଙ୍ଗଲ ପାହାଡକୁ ଯାଇ ତାଙ୍କ ଜାଗାକୁ ଅଧିକାର କରୁଥିବାରୁ ସେମାନେ ବାସହରା ହେଉଛନ୍ତି ବିଭିନ୍ନ ଡ୍ୟାମ ବା ପ୍ରୋଜେକ୍ଟ କରୁଥିବାରୁ ସେମାନଙ୍କୁ ବିସ୍ଥାପନ କରାଯାଉଛି सेही कारण से माने घर द्वार हराउथिबारु निजको विपदपूर्ण अवस्था जीवन अतिबाहित करुछंती। तेणु एटा मॉडर्नाइजेशन हेउचे एक मूल फैक्टर उपादान। नेक्स्ट फैक्टर हला पॉलिटिकल इकोनॉमी। पॉलिटिकल इकोनॉमी has both political economy has both liberal and Marxist interpretations. However, within both these schools, there are differences with regard to emphasis or performance for one or the other aspect of economic activity. One aspect of this is the factor of regional inequalities. Several scholars have pointed out that modernization and industrialization in large multi-ethnic cities tend to process unevenly and often is not always tied to benefit some ethnic group or some region of a country more than others. Watson, for instance, writes, the post-1945 World War expense it was unevenly distributed, not just socially, but in particular geographically. More boldly, the development of a modernization process gave rise to spatially differentiated results, where negative results coincided with a national minority. The potential for a political movement was very likely to be activated. It is noted that the grievances articulated by the minority nationalism were often to do with the economic and the social disadvantage of exploitation. ଯେତେବେଳେ ଦ୍ୱିତୀୟ ବିଶ୍ୱଯୁଦ୍ଧ ପରେ ଏଥନିକ୍ ରହୁଥିବା ଅଞ୍ଚଳ ମାନଙ୍କୁ ବାସହରା କରି ଦିଆଗଲା, ସେତେବେଳେ ସେହି ବାସିନ୍ଦା ଲୋକମାନେ ନିଜକୁ ଜୀବିକା ଆହରଣ ପାଇଁ ଦେଶ ବିଦେଶ ସହରକୁ ଯାତ୍ରା କଲେ, ଯାହା ଫଳରେ ସେମାନେ ନିଜର ଭିଟାମାଟି ବାସସ୍ଥାନକୁ ହରାଇ ବସିଲେ। अर्थ रोजगार उद्देश्य से सहर गमन कले, जोठारे कि निजर लोक कहीं नथिले, निजर बासस्थान किछि नथिला। सेमाने धीरे धीरे अत्यंत दैनंदिन अत्यंत दयनीय जीवन यापन आरंभ करने को लगिले, तांको जीवन अत्यंत दुखमय हवा को लगिला। नेक्स्ट, रिलेटिव डिप्राइवेशन। रिलेटिव डिप्राइवेशन, Ted Robert Gore in his classical study Why Men Rebel, लोक माने कहीं विद्रोह करते, refers to the relative deprivation as a gap between the expectation and perceived capabilities of a person, vice versa. His economic situation, political power and social status in relation to others. जेतेबेले लोक मानकर निजर बंधु परिजन संपर्क माने दूरे जाती, जेतेबेले अर्थनैतिक दुरवस्था आसे, जेतेबेले राजनैतिक चाप वृद्धि हुए, जेतेबेले सामाजिक स्टाटस स्थिर स्थिति बदली जाए, सेतेबेले लोक माने विद्रोह करने को बाध्य होती। He thus emphasizes the psychological aspect of agitations, which conform to Lenin's view that it is the feeling of being exploited rather than the exploitation itself that makes a person revolutionary. लेलिन कहले कि जेतेबेले गोटे गोष्ठी अनेक गोष्ठी पर बारंबार शोषण करिताए, शोषित होइतिबा गोष्ठी सही सही शेष रे ता विरुद्ध रे विद्रोह करने को आरंभ करिताए। According to the theory, it is not just the poor regions that develop nationalism. The rich regions may also be nationalistic if they perceive relative deprivation within the state of economic, political, and cultural matters. The another factor is ethnic and resource competition. ethnicity and resource competition. Resource competition explanation is based on the belief that ethnic cleavage generally act as a facade for deeper socio-economic cleavage. To Rothschild says, politicized ethnicity is not the expression of some more primordial attachment, for rather a instrument in the struggle for power, directly linked to the process of modernization. Resource can be economic or political. Economic resource competition has determined the work of anthropologists employing the ecological model, sociologists who borrow and extend this view have focused on both economic and political resource competitions. Nagel, who calls resource competition cultural materialism, points out that his theory also stressed the importance of technology and environment in determining the form and substance of a culture. It is argued that modernization increases level of competition for jobs, housing, and other valued resources among ethnic groups, and that ethnic conflicts and social movements based on ethnic boundaries occur then the ethnic competition increases. ଯେତେବେଳେ ethnic group ମଧ୍ୟରେ competition ହୁଏ বা ethnic group ସହିତ other civilization competition ହୁଏ, ସେତେବେଳେ civilization higher ଥିଲା ବେଳେ ଆଉ ethnic group ମାନେ lower বা inferior ହୋଇ ଯାଇଥାନ୍ତି, ସେମାନେ କୌଣସି competition କରିପାରନ୍ତି ନାହିଁ, ଯାହା ଫଳରେ ସେମାନେ କୌଣସି ସରକାରୀ ଚାକିରି ହଉ বা ଅନ୍ୟାନ୍ୟ କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ସେମାନେ ପରାଜୟ ବରଣ କରି ନିଜର ଦୁର୍ଭାଗ୍ୟ ସ୍ୱୀକାର କରିଥାନ୍ତି। ତେଣୁ ଏହି କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ପ୍ରତିଯୋଗିତା ମାଧ୍ୟମରେ ବିଫଳ ହେବାରୁ ସେମାନେ ବାଧ୍ୟ ହୋଇ ବିଦ୍ରୋହ କରିବାକୁ ଚେଷ୍ଟା କରିଛନ୍ତି। ଆମେ ଗୋଟେ ବେଟର ଏକ୍ସାମ୍ପଲ ନେଇପାରିବା ମାଓବାଦୀ, ନକ୍ସଲବାଦୀ, ଏମାନେ other civilization, Maoवादी and Naxalism, they are the ethnicity group basically, or not the basically they are the ethnicity group, they are not a competition to the other civilization, so they failed, they revolt against the other civilization। तो ସେମାନେ ଅନ୍ୟ ଜାତି ସହିତ ବା ଅନ୍ୟ ଗ୍ରୁପ ସହିତ କୌଣସି ପ୍ରତିଯୋଗିତା କରି ନ ପାରିବାରୁ ସେମାନେ ବିଦ୍ରୋହ କରିବାକୁ ଶେଷରେ ବାଧ୍ୟ ହେଲେ। The next factor is elite competition. Elite means pragya, wisdom বা বুদ্ধিজীবী। Paul Brass says that ethnic identity and modern nationalism raise out of specific types of interaction between the leaderships of centralizing states and elite from non-dominant ethnic groups, especially but not exclusively on the peripheries of these states. Elite compete under the specific conditions which arise from the broader political and economic environment rather than from the cultural values of ethnic groups in question. The theory is consistent with the assumptions that ethnic identity is itself a variable, rather a final or given disposition. The cultural form, values, and the participants of the ethnic group become the political resources for elite in competition for political power and economic advantages. They become symbols and a reference for the identification of members of the groups which are called up in order to create a political identity more easily. Ethnic committees are created and transformed by the particular elite in modernizing and its post-industrial societies undergoing dramatic social change. Donald Heritage Donald Heritage points out that by appealing to the electorate in ethnic terms, by making ethnic demands of a government, and by blustering the influence of ethnic chauvinist elements within each group, parties that begin by merely mirroring ethnic divisions help to deepen or extend them. However, he also suggests that though the movement for ethnic or cultural rival may begin at the elite levels, it cannot end there. The alienated intelligentsia may be anxious to rediscover its lost roots, but the very loss of these roots disqualifies in form of providing anything more than initial moral and perhaps financial leadership for the search. जो माने एथनिक ग्रुप रे अछंती से माने एलाइट होई सारिबा पर बुद्धिजीवी होई सारिबा परे बा समाजर मुख्य सूत्र शामिल होई सारिबा परे निजर मूल बासिंदा निज मूल स्थिति को से खोजी थांती जेतेले मूल स्थिति खोजिबारे विफल होई थांती बा मूल स्थिति को नष्ट करिबारे जो माने साहाय्य करिथांती से मानक विरुद्ध रे से माने विद्रोह करिबाकू चेष्टा करिथांती। नेक्स्ट पॉइंट इंटरनल कॉलोनियलिज्म। इंटरनल कॉलोनियलिज्म सबुठु बड़ फैक्टर द मोस्ट इंपोर्टेंट फैक्टर ऑफ द कॉलोनियलिज्म। दिस एसेंस ऑफ द इंटरनल कॉलोनियलिज्म theory by Latin American rights within the broad ground of dependency is that the relationship between members of the dominant or core community within a state and the members of the minority or peripheral communities are characterized by the exploitation. In 1965, Casablanca mentioned their internal colonialism correspond to a structure of social relations among culturally heterogeneous distinct groups. A decade later, taking the case of the Ireland of his imperial universe, Michael Hetzer mentioned that ethnic groups would be subjected to internal colonialism in their subjection of the core regions. The main argument behind this contention is that the capital world economy and imperialist state expansion have led to the differential distribution of state resources and valued employed opportunity among the ethnic groups. जेतले कॉलोनियल पीरियड आरंभ हैला ब्रिटिश माने विभिन्न सूत्ररू कर आदाय कले और टंका आदाय करुथिले एपरिकी जंगल रे बास करुथिबा जंगलवासी मानक ठारे मध्य से माने कर आदाय करे जो माने डोमेस्टिक एनिमल रखिथिले सेमानथु मध्य से माने कर आदाय कले जंगल रे काठ संग्रह करबा को जाई एथनिक ग्रुप मानकू जंगल को जीवा पई बारण करागला एवं जंगल मध्य से बाहर कर दिया गला से जंगल भितर बाहरी आसवा पर से बास हराई गले से माने जंगल रु निर्भरशील थिले निजर खाद्य जंगल रु ही संग्रह करुथिले जो कॉलोनियलिज्म समय रे ब्रिटिश माने तांको बासगृह रु विदा कर देबा द्वारा बासगृह हरेबा सहित जीविका मध्य कराइले तेणु से माने ब्रिटिश मानक विरुद्ध रे मध्य विद्रोह करबा को लागिले। आमे इंडिया बा ओडिशा केस देखिबा जे ओडिशा रे अनेक आदिवासी हीरोज जो माने ब्रिटिश मानक विरुद्ध लड़ाई करते बिरसा मुंडा ना शुणी सी जने बड़ जे विद्रोही जे जी कि ब्रिटिश मानक विरुद्ध लड़ी कहीं ना ब्रिटिश मान समस्त संपत्ति आदिवासी मान समस्त अधिकार को हरण करते। नेक्स्ट पॉइंट कल्चरल डिप्राइवेशन। कल्चरल डिप्राइवेशन according to this view one of the significant in documents to ethnicity come from the feeling of insecurity among ethnic minorities of their fear from the getting lost of the sea of minority. This may be either because of the discrimination and oppression by the majority, the state identifying itself with the majority, or the homogenization process arising out of modernization leading to creation of a synthesis state culture. It is not easy to trace prejudice and discrimination empirically. In fact, it is difficult even to define them. आदिम अधिवासी मानकर स्वतंत्र निजस्व ट्राडिशन कस्टम एंड कल्चर अच्छी निजस्व भाषा अच्छी से माने प्रकृति को भल पाती प्रकृति ताले ताले से माने नृत्य करिथांती किंतु आधुनिक जुगर प्रवेश हवा द्वारा तांको संस्कृति नष्ट हो जाइछि तांको परंपरा नष्ट हो जाइछि से माने आग भली से जंगल नाचि जंगल नाई नाचिबे कुआडू आनंद एंजॉय करिबे कुआडू प्रकृति की पूजा करिबे कुआडू तेणु सेमानक संस्कृति बा बारमिशा हो जाए जो आदिम अधिवासी माने जंगल छाड़ी सहर रोचंती से माने पर्व पालन करि पारुचंती ना प्रथा परंपरा को देखि पारुचंती से माने एकुटे हो जाइछंती तेणु से माने संस्कृति सब दूरे दूरे जाइछंती। अदर फैक्टर्स अदर एक्सटर्नल फैक्टर्स according to some observers the support of the ethnic conflict all over the world in recent years owes its sentence to external involvement and support. It is pointed out that the use of a large number of small and medium weapons by the ethnic groups, the requiring huge financial requirements for substances, and mass media exposure to their point of view cannot be explained except in terms of the involvement of external powers. It will suggest that the become of a failure of the often used instrument of foreign policy. The state have restored the warfare through other means, that is support to ethnic groups against the state or the state against the subnational groups. अन्य कारण मध्य बाह्य कारण एथनिक ग्रुप माने निजको सुरक्षित मनु नथिबारु से माने विद्रोह करबा को आरंभ करिसंती। Now the next point is strategies of ethnics. Strategies of ethnics. We have seen above that ethnic movements, apart from the concern for identity, are political, economic, and cultural manifestations of ethnic solidarity. In many cases, ethnic group-based activities seem to be rational responses on its part of the individuals and groups of contemporary situations encouraged in modern societies. The demand and goals of ethnic movement differ from the situation to situation. They range from the simple demands for protection of language, culture, to complete autonomy or separation. Within these, the nature and language of education, the designation of holidays, the development of cultural programs and such other policies. Such other policies measure are issues of concern. These may be demand for the establishment of a federal system or more powers to state in existing federal system like being made by some groups in India or recognition of a special status for state provisions as the case of QB. Its general ethnic demands are the four types. The demands of the ethnic groups are first for affirmative discrimination, two for greater autonomy and unquestioned power, three autonomy demands related to the systematic change, four succession. ତେଣୁ ଏଥନିକ୍ ଗ୍ରୁପ ମାନଙ୍କର এই ଆନ୍ଦୋଳନ କରିବା ପଛରେ ମୁଖ୍ୟତଃ ଚାରୋଟି କାରଣ ଦାୟୀ। ଗୋଟିଏ ହେଲା ସମାଜ ସେମାନଙ୍କୁ ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ର ଯାହା ପ୍ରଦତ୍ତ କରୁଛି ତାହା ସେମାନଙ୍କୁ ପ୍ରଦାନ କରାଯାଉ। ଆଦିମ ଅଧିବାସୀ ମାନଙ୍କୁ ସ୍ୱତନ୍ତ୍ରତା ପ୍ରଦାନ କରାଯାଉ। ସେମାନଙ୍କ ଜୀବନ ଶୈଳୀକୁ ସୁଗମ କରିବା ପାଇଁ स्वतंत्र भावे ग्रांट प्रदान करा जाऊ एवं सेमानक ठारो हजि जाइथिबा जल जमी जंगल को पुणी थर प्रदान करा जाऊ। ए सब डिमांड नै सेमाने सब आंदोलन करिसंती। हला नाउ आई एम गोइंग टू another unit 19 political regimes. Please see the unit 19 political regimes. We live in the world nation state. There are about 194 nation states in the world today. Every state has a separate geographical boundary in which people live under their own political regime. The term regime is different from the term system. While system implies major concept functions and structures, the term regime stands for the specific institutional arrangements, how relationship of the arrangement, pattern and organization in the given society. आमे आधुनिक जुगरे बसवास करुथिबारु वर्तमान पाखापाखि 194 नेशंस यूनाइटेड नेशंस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन अधीन रहिचंती। प्रत्येक देश रे पॉलिटिकल रिजिम्स मीन्स पॉलिटिकल एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन पॉलिटिकल सिस्टम डिफरेंट अटे। अमेरिकार पॉलिटिकल सिस्टम इज नॉट इक्विवेलेंट टू इंडियन पॉलिटिकल सिस्टम. Chinese political system is not equivalent to British political system. So there are different political regime in different nations. The term political regime denotes the particular political institutions arrangements, how political relationships are structured and organized in a given society. According to Roy Marchits, a renowned scholar of comparative politics, a political regime embodies in set of rules, procedures, and understanding that formula the relationship between the governors and the governed. In every political regime, there are a variety of political institutions: the legislature, the political parties, bureaucracy, To mention a few that perform the allotted tasks and role involved in the governance. People in different types of political regime in which various political institutions play a great variety of roles and perform differently. Although the institutions may carry the same name label, thus legislatures or political parties, bureaucracies play different roles and perform differently in different regions. ପ୍ରତ୍ୟେକ ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରରେ ପଲିଟିକାଲ ସିଷ୍ଟମ ଅଲଗା ଅଟେ। ଆଇନ ପ୍ରଣୟନ ବ୍ୟବସ୍ଥା ବା ଲେଜିସ୍ଲେଟିଭ ବଡି, କାର୍ଯ୍ୟପାଳିକା ହଉ, କୋଉଠି ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରପତି ମୁଖ୍ୟ ତ କୋଉଠି ପ୍ରାଇମ ମିନିଷ୍ଟର ମୁଖ୍ୟ, କୋଉଠି ରାଜାରାଣୀ ମୁଖ୍ୟ ଅଛନ୍ତି, କେଉଁଠି ପଲିଟିକାଲ ପାର୍ଟି ମଧ୍ୟ କାମ କରୁଛି, କେଉଁଠି ବ୍ୟୁରୋକ୍ରାସି ବା ସିଭିଲ ସର୍ଭେଣ୍ଟ ମାନେ କାମ କରୁଛି। ତେଣୁ ଏଇଭଳିଆ ଡିଫରେଣ୍ଟ ସିଚୁଏସନ୍ସ ହାଭ୍ ଇନ୍ ଦ ଡିଫରେଣ୍ଟ ନେସନ୍ସ। So we have seen the different political regimes in the different nations. Also each political regime is the product of its own peculiar historical, cultural, economic or social and international factors which condition the political behavior and the attitude of those who govern and those who are governed. Regimes may also vary in their stability and legitimate degree of the institutions, status of their development, and the kind of rules that determine the relation between the governors and the governed. ସରକାର ଓ ସରକାରୀ ସଂସ୍ଥା, ସରକାର ଓ ନାଗରିକ ମଧ୍ୟରେ ଏ ସମ୍ପର୍କ ସୃଷ୍ଟି କରିବା, ଇଏ ହେଉଛି ପଲିଟିକାଲ ରିଜିମର ମୁଖ୍ୟ ଉଦ୍ଦେଶ୍ୟ। Now the next point, general characteristics of the political regimes or the features of the political regimes. First one, according to the Markidis, he observes the characteristics of the political regime that are: first one is generate commonly shared goals and to do so. It must provide for socialization, for a common acceptance of the goals and the institutions through which these goals are to be realized. That is the prevailing ideology. Number two, provide the mechanisms for decision making. Number three, establish mechanisms for articulation or interest and the aggression of interests that determine policy. Number four, provide for the way and means whereby decision makers are selected together with the rules for their successions. Number five, maintain order by providing to effective controls against disruptive behavior. Number six, be capable of self-preservation. All political regimes try to perform these functions in different degrees through the institutions they should constitute, and they are the assert the term of the ability of perform them. Now the next point is functions of a political regime. Functions of a political regime. Number one, the organization of a command. In essence, the state and its agencies, which is often referred to as the government. Again, the organization of a command. In essence, the state and its agencies, which is often referred to as the government. Number two, the organization of a consent. Number 3, the configuration of interest. Number 4,
Sir,
the
second point ଟା କଣ
organization
ଆଉଥରେ?
of a right.
Hello,
The
second
second
point ଟା
point
please.
was the to organization of a consent. ମତାମତ ନେଇ କୌଣସି ଅର୍ଗାନାଇଜେସନ ବା ଇନଷ୍ଟିଟ୍ୟୁସନ ଗଠନ କରିପାରିବେ। ଗୋଟିଏ ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରରେ ବିଭିନ୍ନ ପ୍ରକାର ଅନୁଷ୍ଠାନ ଅଛି। କୌଣସି ଅନୁଷ୍ଠାନ କରିବାକୁ ହେଲେ ତମ ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରର ଯେ ଅଥରିଟି ଅଛନ୍ତି ତାଙ୍କଠାରୁ ତମେ ମତାମତ ନେଇପାରିବ। ସପୋଜ ୟୁ ଆର୍ ବିଙ୍ଗ ଏ ପଲିଟିକାଲ ପାର୍ଟି or you are build a political party, ତମେ ଗୋଟେ ପଲିଟିକାଲ ପାର୍ଟି ଗଠନ କରିବାକୁ ଚାହୁଁଛ, ତମ ମନେ ଇଚ୍ଛା କରିପାରିବ ନାହିଁ। ସେଥିପାଇଁ ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରର ପରମିଶନ ନେବାକୁ ପଡିବ, ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ର ନିକଟରେ ପଞ୍ଜୀକୃତ କରିବାକୁ ପଡିବ। ୱିଦାଉଟ୍ କନସେଣ୍ଟ, ୱିଦାଉଟ୍ ପରମିଶନ you cannot do forming a organization. Number 3, the configuration of interest. ସ୍ୱାର୍ଥ ଥିବା ଦରକାର। ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରର ସ୍ୱାର୍ଥ ସମ୍ବଳେ ତମ ସ୍ୱାର୍ଥ ଦେଲେ ହବନି। ତମେ ତ ଗୋଟେ ସନ୍ତ୍ରାସବାଦୀ ସଂଗଠନ ଖୋଲିବ, ଆତଙ୍କବାଦୀ ସଂଗଠନ ଖୋଲିବ, କାରଣ ଅନୁମତି ଦିଆଯିବ। ଯୋଉଟା କି ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ର ସ୍ୱାର୍ଥ ସହିତ ଜଡିତ ଥିବ, ତମ ସ୍ୱାର୍ଥ ପ୍ଲସ ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରର ସ୍ୱାର୍ଥ। Number 4, the organization of rights. ଯୋଉଟା କି ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ର ତମକୁ ଅଧିକାର ଦେଇଛି, ତମକୁ ଗୋଟେ କ୍ଲବ ଗଠନ କରିବାକୁ ଦେଇଛି, ଅଧିକାର ତମେ କରିପାରିବ। ତମେ ଗୋଟେ କଲେଜ ଖୋଲିବାର ଅଧିକାର ଦେଇଛି, ଖୋଲି ପାରିବ। କିନ୍ତୁ ତମେ ଏଠି ଗୋଟିଏ ଯୁଦ୍ଧ କ୍ଷେତ୍ର ଖୋଲିବାର ଅଧିକାର ତମକୁ ଦିଆଯାଏ ନାହିଁ, ତମେ ଖୋଲି ପାରିବ ନାହିଁ। That are the functions of the political regime. The next point is the formal organs of the command. The formal organs of a command. Despite their differences, all political regimes have a similar formal command structure. The executive branch is at the top, administration or bureaucracy subordinates it. The legislature makes laws and the judiciary implies the laws, and the state settle dispute about the laws. There are also similar in the way that they are relationship of arranged by the constitution. A written constitution or a unwritten constitution set up the rules that prescribed the limits of power, the manner in which power will be used, and the responsibility of the freedom of the citizens. ସରକାରଙ୍କର ବିଭିନ୍ନ ଅଙ୍ଗ ଅଛି, ଜାଣିଥିବ। there are 3 organs of a government. legislative, ଯାହାର କାମ ହେଲା ଆଇନ ତିଆରି କରିବା। ସେକେଣ୍ଡ, ଏକ୍ଜିକ୍ୟୁଟିଭ, ଯାହାର କାମ ହେଲା ପ୍ରଦତ୍ତ ଆଇନକୁ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟକାରୀ କରାଇବା। ନମ୍ବର 3 ହେଲା ଜୁଡିସିଆରୀ, ଯାହାର କାମ ହେଲା ପ୍ରଦତ୍ତ ଆଇନକୁ ବିଚାର କରିବା। এই ସବୁ ଅର୍ଗାନ ମାଧ୍ୟମରେ ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରର କାର୍ଯ୍ୟ ସମ୍ପାଦନ କରାଯାଇଥାଏ। ନେକ୍ସଟ, टाइप्स ऑफ पॉलिटिकल केते प्रकार, पॉलिटिकल शासन केते प्रकार अछि। फर्स्ट वन, डेमोक्रेटिक रिजिम्स। जेतले आगो क्लास कहि सारिछि मोनार्की, अरिस्टोक्रेसी, रिपब्लिक और डेमोक्रेसी, थ्री डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ द political regimes. First one is democratic regimes. In a democratic society, individuals are assumed to free, clearly defined the democratical institutions, limitations, and responsibilities are the 2 key features of the root of the essence of democratic regimes. Democratic शासन रे एटी सरकार जनताଙ୍କ निकटरे उत्तरदायी रुहंती। जनता चाहिले सरकार गठन करती, जनता चाहिले सरकार को पतन करिथांती। सो द गवर्नमेंट हैज ए लिमिटेशन पावर, बट द पब्लिक हैज ए अनलिमिटेड पावर्स। All democratic regimes have a constitution sort of a detailed, written or unwritten based. The constitution established in the various ways of the responsibility by accountability of the public functionaries to the citizen. It clearly spells out the limitations and responsibility of the individuals, rights, organization, and structure of government, specific rules of the powers which are assigned to the three major organs of the government: legislative, executive, and judiciary. Okay. The next point is a totalitarian regime. समष्टिवाद प्रशासन समष्टिवाद जो आरिस्टोक्रेसी कथा कहली इज द एसेंस ऑफ द टोटलिटेरियनिज्म regime फासीवाद शुणिथिबो जर्मनी इटली रे फासीवाद नाजीवाद शासन व्यवस्था से गोटे अलग प्रकार शासन व्यवस्था सेठी हला देखिबा से टोटल केमिति होची द एसेंस ऑफ द टोटलिटेरियनिज्म lies in the ideology offers a set of comprehensive propositions about the problem of a democracy, sorry, problem of the society. General public is tightly organized in the name of the ideology, which is the goal of discrimination it and the imposing it. All totalitarian regimes are based on the single party system. The totalitarian regimes can be classified in the communism totalitarian regimes like East while Soviet Union and the Eastern European countries and the Balkans areas, Cuba, Vietnam, Mongolia, Ethiopia, Angola, Mozambique, Nicaragua, that are the non-communist totalitarian regimes. जर्मनी नाजी इटाली फासी जर्मनी नाजीवाद इटाली फासीवाद हूँ टोटल शासन एक मुख्य उदाहरण एठारे गोटे मात्र पार्टी काम कर निजर आदर्श देशर आदर्श मातृभूमि से काम करते निज आदर्श को से अधिक गुरुत्व देता इटाली एकत्रीकरण जर्मनी एकत्रीकरण यह काम कर आग्रेसिव मोड सर्वदा रही था Number 3, authoritarian regimes. Nearly half of the political regimes in the world are based on the authoritarian regime. They can be classified. They can be classified as personal regimes like Saudi Arabia, single party regimes of outright personal tyranny, states and the bureaucratic and military regimes. Before going into the nature of the authoritarian regimes, let us first try to kind of some of the causes as to by the society that transformed into the authoritarian regimes. Authoritarian regime by एकछत्रवाद शासन क्षेत्र में आम साउदी अरेबिया कथा आलोचना करबा, उत्तर कोरिया नॉर्थ कोरिया कथा आलोचना करबा, ए सब राष्ट्र गुडी करे single the power is centralized, the power is centralized, so एटी समस्त क्षमता सेंटर निकट रे ठोल होता है तो से जहाँ कहती जहाँ निर्देश दिखती ताहा करने को पड़ता है. Firstly, authoritarianism can be related to the nature of formation of a nation state. Sometimes centralized control of the response mechanism tend to revolve with the view to deal with the dissident ethnic, regional, economic, tribal and religious groups. In some states, especially when they are the insecure or weak. Secondly, where there is a highly unbalanced relationship between the civil society and the state. Thirdly, where the middle classes are weak and unable to form associational representatives, parties or networks by the limit with the state. Number 4, where there is a hidden or inherent tendency towards statism or to put the same idea negatively, where restraints against to the state view and the weak. Next, the features or characteristics of the authoritarian regime. First one, तार वैशिष्ट्य बा लक्षण गुड़िक कला द मिलिटारी इज हाईली सिग्निफिकेंट एंड इन्फ्लुएंशियल इन सच स्टेट तार मुख्य होची मिलिटारी शासक हे पारे बा जने जो शासक अत्यधिक क्षमताशाली लोक हे पारे उत्तर कोरिया इज अ परफेक्ट एग्जांपल ही जे मोनो ऑटोटेरियन जे डिक्टेटरशिप इन नॉर्थ कोरिया Number 2, the level of a population. The level of a popular participation is very low. Number 3, rights specially political rights are either non-existent or normal. Number 4, there is a normal absence of any ideology to mobilize the masses. Number 5, while trying to subordinate social and interest groups, authoritarian regime do not undertake the reconstruction of the society. तो ये एभलिया देश रे बसवास करिबा भारी डिफिकल्ट कोरिया दीटा गोटे नॉर्थ कोरिया गोटे साउथ कोरिया डेमोक्रेसी थला बेले नॉर्थ कोरिया ऑटोक्रेसी नॉर्थ कोरिया जो लोक माने बसवास करछन अत्यंत दुखमय ओ शोषण रे जीवन यापन करुछन द टाइप्स ऑफ अथॉरिटेरियन रिजिम्स गोटे हला टायरेनी द्वितीय रे हला डायनास्टिक रिजिम तृतीय हला मिलिटरी रिजिम्स एंड सिंगल पार्टी रिजिम टायरेंट कोन वे इन टायरेंट्स द पॉलिटिकल पावर इज एक्वायर्ड एंड wielded by the tyrant in a personal and absolute manner निरंकुश क्षमता प्राप्त करता है ताकि ते किछि कहि परिबेनी the instruments of the coercion are carefully developed through the police and the army कथा कथा के पुलिस आर्मी लगाई के लोक मान को जंत्रणा देता दंड प्रदान करता है द्वितीय नंबर हला डायनामिक रिजिम्स गतिशील शासन डायनामिक regimes are different both from the monarchy and the tyranny in the sense that power is not acquired on the basis of force. In dynamic regimes, political power is shared by the king and family. The Sultan of Brunei, after the achieving the independence, appointed his family members to the various posts. एठी कौन हुए ना वंशधर माने शासन करता जने जेमिति भारत रे आमे कहिबा मुगल माने तांको वंशधर शासन करथिले स्वाधीनता पर गांधी फैमिली से माने शासन करूचंती ओडिसा रे पटनायक फैमिली से माने शासन करूचंती दैट आर द डायनास्टिक रिजिम्स वंशगत शासक नंबर 3 मिलिटरी रिजिम्स military government is the most common from the contemporary authoritarian regime. The reason of military interventions into politics are twofold. Firstly, a strong and genuine affirmative between the office corps, the governing elite, and the public at large about the political norms, values, and institutions of the political regime. The acceptance of a civilian role and institutions is internalized in the officer corps. Army interventions is considered improper and unacceptable by the everybody concerned. मिलिटारी शासन रे मिलिटारी मुख्य शासन करिथांती पुलिस आर्मी एमानक द्वारा शासन परिचालित होइथाय ये शासन क्षेत्र रे लोक माने कोनसी मुह खोली पारंती नाही द लास्ट वन इज सिंगल पार्टी अथॉरिटेरियन regime single party authoritarian regimes whether military or civilian exist in the Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, China. US military attacks the leading of a Gulf War second in April 2003. Tunisia, Tanzania, Egypt, Kenya, and Mexico, where there is a role dominant party in such regimes in the single political party is the only one of the organization the regime established or allows in the order to maintain its rule and gain supports. तेणु यही शासन एक मात्र गोटे मात्र पॉलिटिकल पार्टी शासन करि थाए. नेक्स्ट पॉइंट इभालुएशन ऑफ पॉलिटिकल रिजिम्स मूल्यांकन करिबा राजनैतिक शासन रे हम देखिले यार मूल्यांकन करिबा thus we have seen that modern political regimes can be classified into three main categories for the purpose of understanding and analyzing: democratic regimes, number two authoritarian regimes, number three totalitarian regimes. On the basis of the above can draw some conclusions regarding the strength and the weakness of a particular regimes. Firstly, let us talk about the which regime is more durable and stable. जो तीनटा पॉलिटिकल शासन कथा कुआ गला एते कोडा तुमको भल लागु डेमोक्रेटिक गोटे अथॉरिटेटिक गोटे और टोटलिटरी प्रत्येक शासन सुगुण अछि आ दुर्गुण अछि तो किंतु ए तीनोटी शासन मध्यरु डेमोक्रेटिक शासन अत्यंत उत्तम अटे किंतु बहुत डिले अटे किंतु अथॉरिटेरियन शासन क्षेत्र रे सॉरी हाँ अथॉरिटेरियन शासन क्षेत्र रे शासन द्रुत गति रे कार्य करिथाय किंतु टोटलिटरियन रिजिम क्षेत्र रे सेठी निज मातृभूमि बा निज आइडियोलॉजी को नेकी से माने शासन करते अन्य मानक प्रति से माने गुरुत्व देई न थांती now I am going to next point political regime similarities and dissimilarities and dissimilarities. There are points of convergence and divergence in the modern political regimes. Firstly, in all three of the role and the position of a legislature has been incapacitated. Legislation are enacted mainly on the initiative of the executive. The executive is solely control the army, budget, and the foreign policy. Second, the difference between the democratic and the authoritarian or totalitarian regimes lie in the style of which we relationship between the society and state in the structure. In a communist totalitarian states of the emphasis was the engaging social force into the state and makes them conform. In democracies, the emphasis is always on separating society from state. Coming to specific differences in matters of the institutional tense, we find that all the democratic countries. Conclusion of the political regimes. A political regime embodies a set of rules, procedures, and the understanding that formulate the relationship between those who govern and the governed. Those who govern and the governed. Sasako Sasito. A political regime should have some commonly shared goals, mechanisms for decision making, mechanism for articulation of interest that determine policy and the means of the selecting the decision makers. It should also be the capable of self-preservation. There are a variety of political regimes, namely democratic regimes, total regimes, and the authoritarian regimes. Though we have a variety of political regimes with their respective plus and negative points, none of them has been able to provide a perfect solution of to the problems facing present international society. None has been able to term out prescriptions of the promoting international peace or to check environment degradation and create equal distribution of resources. ए तीनोटी शासन जे कोटा जे परफेक्ट शासन ताहा कहिबा एते सहज नुहे तेणु पृथ्वी रे ए तीन प्रकार शासन व्यवस्था प्रचलित अछि जो देश जहाँ को सुहा होची से सही देश को शासन पद्धति चली Unity 19 already completed. Now I am going to the another unity 20. Unit 20, that is bureaucracy. Bureaucracy means civil servant. Bureaucracy means civil servant. They are the real architect of the government machineries. What is bureaucracy? Bureaucracy commonly is used to refer to all the agencies and structures involved in the public administration. Bureaucracy, however, refers to the particular way of organizing such agencies. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica defines bureaucracy as a professional corps of official organized in the pyramidal hierarchy and functioning under the impersonal uniform rules and procedures to secure the goals of the organizations. The public bureaucracies, civil service, or other administrative agencies, dominant modern societies, and political regimes. These agencies comprises the members of the executive branch below the chief political executive are normally responsible for the implementing public policies. There has been an increase in the size of the government bureaucracy over the last century or so as the result of the proliferation in the governmental functions. In other words, the growth of the modern state and the demands of the social and economic development have given rise to the administrative structures and their multiplications. ଆଧୁନିକ ଯୁଗରେ ରିପବ୍ଲିକ ଶାସନ ବା ଗଣତନ୍ତ୍ର ଶାସନ ପ୍ରଚଳନ ହେବା ଦ୍ୱାରା ବ୍ୟୁରୋକ୍ରାସି ମାନଙ୍କର ଆବଶ୍ୟକତା ରହିଛି। ଆମେ ଯଦି ବୁଝିବା ବ୍ୟୁରୋକ୍ରାସି କ'ଣ ନା ବ୍ୟୁରୋକ୍ରାସି ହେଉଛି ସେମାନେ ହେଉଛନ୍ତି ସିଭିଲ ସର୍ଭେଣ୍ଟ। ସେମାନେ ହେଉଛନ୍ତି ସିଭିଲ ସର୍ଭେଣ୍ଟ। ସିଭିଲ ସର୍ଭେଣ୍ଟ କାମ କ'ଣ ହେଲା? ସେମାନେ ସରକାରୀ ଶାସନର ମୁଖ୍ୟ ଯନ୍ତ୍ରୀ ଅଟନ୍ତି। ମୁଖ୍ୟ ଯନ୍ତ୍ରୀ ଅଟନ୍ତି। ତାଙ୍କ ମାଧ୍ୟମରେ ସରକାରୀ ଶାସନ ପରିଚାଳିତ ହୋଇଥାଏ। ସେମାନେ ହେଉଛନ୍ତି ପବ୍ଲିକ ଅଫିସର। ଦେ ଆର୍ ଲିଙ୍କଡ ବିଟୱିନ୍ ଗଭର୍ଣ୍ଣମେଣ୍ଟ ଆଣ୍ଡ ପବ୍ଲିକ ଡାଇରେକ୍ଟଲି। ଏକ୍ସାମ୍ପଲ ନେଇପାରିବା ଇଣ୍ଡିଆନ ସିଭିଲ ସର୍ଭିସ କେସରେ କଲେକ୍ଟର, ତହସିଲଦାର, ବିଡିଓ, they are the public officers. The response for the public. They implemented the government rules, regulations for the public. According to the Max Weber theory of the bureaucracy. Max Weber is the father of the bureaucracy theory. It goes to the credit to the Max Weber, the German historian turned sociology, to give a systematic theory of bureaucracy. The patrimonial type of prevalent in traditional and charismatic authority system and the ideal model of the legal rational bureaucracy of legal relations authority systems of modern times. Max Weber was the first one to talk about the bureaucracy as a big improvement over the haphazard administration. He is not merely the most up-quoted theory of public administrative organizations, but also a starting point for most social science research on the bureaucracy. Next point, Max Weber's authority system. In his typology of authority system, Max Weber, on the basis of the claim to the legitimacy has classified authority as first one traditional authority, number two charismatic authority, number three rational authority. से मार्क्स वेबर अथॉरिटी को तीन भाग व्यक्त करछंती गोटे हला पारंपरिक प्रभुत्व दूर हला चमत्कारिता प्रभुत्व तृतीय हला रेशनल प्रभुत्व in the traditional authority the basis of the acceptance and the legitimacy of the authority is secretiveness of the ruler and his orders. Under this system personal contracts loyalties kinship etc influence the structure and decisions of the administration. এই ट्रेडिशनल अथॉरिटी क्षेत्र में निजर पारंपरिक वंशधर संपर्क माने अंशग्रहण करिथांती और शासन कार्य नियोजित होइथांती। नेक्स्ट वन द करिश्माटिक अथॉरिटी करिश्मा और द supernatural qualities of the ruler of the basis of the acceptance of the authority. Charisma is a gift from above whether the leader himself know what to do. A charismatic leader construct with the traditional leadership of a king or modern rational leadership of the administrative or the elected leader. चमत्कारी प्रभुत्व होची सेही प्रभुत्व जे निजर कला कौशल और चमत्कारिता माध्यम रे से प्रभुत्व अर्जन करिथाय। The last one is rational leadership authority. In the legal rational system, the acceptance of authority is sought on the basis of the rules, which are the form framed in the impersonal, impartial, and rational manner. Max Weber, according to Max Weber, a bureaucracy is a particular type of administrative structure developed in the association with the rational legal mode of authority. In his view, only traditional and rational legal authority relations of the sufficiently stable to provide the basis for the formation of permanent administrative structures. Rational authority कौन हुए ना यही प्रभुत्व को आईन सम्मत होता है लोक माने सम्मत क्रम करिथांती लोक मानक द्वारा बा वैधानिक माध्यम रे से प्रभुत्व अधिकार करिथांती। नेक्स्ट पॉइंट कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स ऑफ मार्क्स वेबर्स मॉडल मार्क्स वेबर मॉडल कर लक्षण फर्स्ट वन specialization and elaborate division of labor. First one is specialization and an elaborate division of the labor. Number two, hierarchy of position. Hierarchy माने बड़रू सान क्रमे पिरामिडिकल को आजा हायरार्की सभा ऊपर रहबे बॉस सभा तळ रहबे पियोन बा तळ कर्मचारी तो हायरार्की सिस्टम को आजा। Number three, technical competence as the chief criterion of the recruitment and promotion. एथरे किछि टेक्निकल स्टाफ और टेक्निकल व्यवस्था करा जाय थाय। नंबर फोर, रिटिन रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशंस प्रत्यम नियम कानून गुडी को लिखित आकार थाय। नंबर फाइव, इम्पर्सनालिटी निजर व्यक्तित्व बुद्धि गुण ए सब थिबा दरकार। नंबर सिक्स, फॉर्मल रिटिन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन लिखित संविधान प्रस्तुत थिबा दरकार। Now I am going to next point. Marxist view on the bureaucracy. Marxist means Karl Marx. Bureaucracy उपरे कार्ल मार्क्सଙ୍କର ମତାମତ କଣ ଅଛି? Marxist writes a view bureaucracy in their own perspectives, where Lenin and other Soviet writers could not be admit that bureaucracy had a permanent and organic position in the Soviet system. Other Marxists thought that it was its center and that it had defined more than anything else the very nature of the regime. From their point of view, bureaucracy was not only a privileged oppressive group, but a new exploiting classes, a class characterized by a new type of oligarchic regime that was neither socialistic nor capitalist, and that was rapidly spreading both the east and the far west. କାଲମାସଙ୍କ ମତରେ ଏ ସମାଜ ଦୁଇଟା ଗୋଷ୍ଠୀ ପରିଣତ ହେଇଛି, ଗୋଟେ ଥିଲା ବାଲା ହାଫ୍ସ ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ନଥିଲା ବାଲା ହାଫ୍ସ, ଗୋଟେ ଶୋଷଣକାରୀ ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଶୋଷିତ ଗୋଷ୍ଠୀ, ଗୋଟେ ପୁଞ୍ଜିପତି ଗୋଟେ ସର୍ବହରା। ଏଇ ସମାଜ ଦୁଇ ଭାଗ ମଧ୍ୟରେ ବ୍ୟୁରୋକ୍ରାସି ମାନେ କେଉଁ ଗୋଷ୍ଠୀରେ ଯାଉଛନ୍ତି? ନା ସେମାନେ ପୁଞ୍ଜିପତିରେ ଯାଉଛନ୍ତି ନା ସେମାନେ ସର୍ବହରା ଯାଉଛନ୍ତି। ସେମାନେ ହଉଛନ୍ତି ଏକ ସ୍ପେଶାଲ ଗୋଷ୍ଠୀ, ଶିକ୍ଷିତ ବର୍ଗ ଯୋଉମାନେ ସମାଜ ପାଇଁ କାମ କରିଥାନ୍ତି, ଉଭୟ କ୍ୟାପିଟାଲିଷ୍ଟ ମାନ ପାଇଁ ଅର ପୁରେଟୁରେଟ ମାନ ପାଇଁ। The first systematic elaboration of this position of the attempt by the Italian Marxist Bornorigi in the bureaucratism of the world, the Soviet bureaucracy constituted a new ruling class that expected the proletariat as much as the capitalists had in the past. It differed from the capitalism only in that the new type of domination was based on to the individual but on group ownership of the means of productions. Now, next point, relationship between the political and the permanent executive. There are two types of executive in the state. What are political executive and a permanent executive? They are involved in the administration. Political executive means the political leaders like prime minister, ministers, MP, MLA. They are the political executives. They are engaged in the political wars. But another groups are the permanent executives. They are the civil servants. They are the civil servants. Servants are the servant. They work in permanently. But the political executives are work in only for 5 years. After the completion of 5 years, they automatically removed from the position. But permanent executives are working in the lifetime. After 62 or 65 years old. Power is the most important variable in the study of the bureaucracy. Control of bureaucracy by political leaders has lately diminished owing to the growth in the size and the discretionary powers of the bureaucracy. The relationship between the political leaders and the bureaucracy is quite intricate and complex. Symbolic as far as the formation and the implementation of the policies is concerned. Bureaucratic guidance and support are the crucial to the political leadership, and the bureaucrats have many assets. They are permanent freedom from the electoral warriors, their knowledge of the files and their control of the communication, which they can be used to go their way in encounters with the politicians. Functions of the bureaucracy in modern times. What are the functions of the bureaucracy? They have the major roles in the society. Bureaucrats have the major roles in the society. In modern democratic political regimes, bureaucracy is entrusted with the function to implement the rules made by the legislature. Rule implementation is considered to be mechanical and a quasi-automatic process. However, according to the Blondel, this view is over-amplified as administrators help their ministers to prepare the decisions as they cannot draft all the rules and regulations without the help of the administrators. Hence, the help of rendered by the administrations to their ministers is of immense magnitude in view of the fact that even rule making has become a very complex function. The political regimes are involved in the preparation of both short as well as long-term socio-economic plan and policies. Political executive ମାନେ permanent executive ମାନେ ସର୍ବଦା political executive ପାଖେ ପାଖେ ରହିଥାନ୍ତି। ଯଦି political executive ମାନେ ହୁଅନ୍ତି ମନ୍ତ୍ରୀ ତାହେଲେ permanent executive ମାନେ ତାଙ୍କର secretariat ବା assistant ଭାବରେ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟ କରିଥାନ୍ତି। ତେଣୁ ପ୍ଲାନ୍ ତିଆରି କରିବା ପଲିସି ତିଆରି କରିବା ଏସବୁ କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ସେମାନେ ତାଙ୍କୁ ସାହାଯ୍ୟ କରିଥାନ୍ତି ହେଲା। ତେଣୁ ପରମାନେଣ୍ଟ ଏକ୍ଜିକ୍ୟୁଟିଭ ବା ପଲିଟିକାଲ ଏକ୍ଜିକ୍ୟୁଟିଭ ଉଭୟ ମିଳିତ ଭାବରେ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟ ସମ୍ପାଦନ କରିଥାନ୍ତି। କାରଣ ପଲିଟିକାଲ ଏକ୍ଜିକ୍ୟୁଟିଭ ମାନେ ସେମାନେ ଲେମ୍ୟାନ୍, ସେମାନେ ଆଇନ କାନୁନ ବିଷୟରେ ଅଜ୍ଞ ଥାନ୍ତି, କିନ୍ତୁ ପରମାନେଣ୍ଟ ଏକ୍ଜିକ୍ୟୁଟିଭ ମାନେ ଏସବୁ କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ସେମାନଙ୍କୁ ସାହାଯ୍ୟ କରିଥାନ୍ତି। Next point, bureaucracy in developing countries. Bureaucracy in developing countries. In the emerging developing societies, bureaucracy has come to acquire the following features. Firstly, as state plays a key role in the process of development, bureaucracy has been regarded as an important instrument for modernization, growth, and development. However, experience in most third world shows that bureaucracy has not been able to deliver goods as effectively as the theorists on bureaucracy had expected. On the other hand, the structural and behavioral characteristics of the Weber's bureaucracy proved to be international in impeding development. Secondly, unlike the development countries, there is less differentiation of functions in the developing countries. As a result of which the power and importance of bureaucracy cross its legitimate limits. Thirdly, appointments are done on the basis of merit, which is judged through a public competitive examination comparing both written and personality tests. However, the intervention of primordial factors such as personal, caste, tribal, ethnic, or religious considerations is still a harsh reality. Fourthly, the politicians of bureaucracy. The politicization of bureaucracy is another characteristic in the developing countries. In India, the concept of committee bureaucracy was mooted by the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi in the late 1960s, implying that the bureaucracies should have committed to the party in power. However, because of a great public cry, Mrs. Gandhi had to later revise her stance, clarifying that what she wanted was a commitment to the basic law of the land rather than the government. but the fact is that there has been erosion of the principle of the bureaucratic neutrality in the country. The appointment to top official both at the center and the state are done on the basis of personal and party loyalty. Next point, rule of bureaucracy in developing countries. Developing countries जे bureaucracy मानकर भूमिका कौन अछि? Some scholars made a play to these countries to attempt a strengthen the centralized, efficient, and strong bureaucracies. If they were to achieve the task of economic and political development, in the words of Joseph La Palambra, a powerful bureaucracy is said to the essential in if one is to the override the disintegrating influence of artificial political boundaries, the comparative forces of familial and tribal structures, the difficult for the organizing and financing political parties. Last point, conclusion of the bureaucracy. Conclusion of the bureaucracy. Conclusion of the bureaucracy. From the above discussion, it can be concluded that despite the important criticism and the dysfunctionalism with which bureaucracy suffers today, it has some to stay as a vital institution of governance. No political regime of whatever name and ideology can do without it. Of course, there are considerable differences about the way the bureaucracy functions and the kind of role in the performing different political regime depending upon the way its member and recruited, trained and introduced in the political system. Its specific role of the governance would also depend upon the relationship with the other political institutions and the political leadership in the country concerned. In the past of the decade, the emergence of the new public management movement in most countries has sought to downsize the role and appearance of a bureaucracy in most political regions. But now where in this world as the bureaucracy came to the competently abolished, which is the reinforced in the continued importance to the shaping and activity of a modern political system. आधुनिक जुगरे बुरेक्रेसी मानकर भूमिका अत्यंत गुरुत्वपूर्ण अटे. बुरेक्रेसी माने सेमाने ट्रेंड एंड स्किल्ड, सेमाने ट्रेंड एवं स्किल से दृष्टि सेमाने देशर शासन कल क्षेत्र में भूमिका गुरुत्वपूर्ण रोचे. तेणु बुरेक्रेसी बिना शासन कल चलवा एत सहज बा संभव नुहे. से प्रकृत शासन कलर मंग धरी जड़े जड़े दक्ष ऑपरेटर. Now, unit 20 already completed. I am going to next unit 21. Military in politics. ରାଜନୀତି କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ମିଲିଟାରୀ ଆବଶ୍ୟକତା କ'ଣ? Military and democratic regimes, constitution and other form of the law of the land in many countries do provide for the rule of the armed forces. Most of the democracies tend to clearly restrict their missions of the military to the provision of national security as well as to the other secondary roles in case of emergency only. A number of states in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, they are called a third world. For example, have adopted legal structures which protect democracy by providing for the right to president, the police, and the military officers to exercise extraordinary powers on a temporary basis for the suspensions of civil liberties and for the armed forces to play a specified role in the democratic by defending the permanent interest of the nation. The relationship between the civil society and the military in any democratic society is dominated on the basis of principles. First one, there should be a leadership of the civilian executive branch of the government that is the accountable to a popular majority through the frequent and regular elections. Military is a subject to the control and the supervision by all the three organs of the government. Number two, the appointments of the personnel of the armed forces are done on behalf of the civilian head of the state. Civilian leadership is superior to the military services and departments. The professional military head to the army, the navy, and the air force of a subordinate to civilian departmental heads. Number C, elected legislative representations of the people. Elected legislative representatives of the people enact law and define the defense organizations and policies of the nation. The chief executive enforces these directives. Number D, the judiciary prevents the military from the compromising civil liberty, including those of the members who armed policies. Would a democratic ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରରେ ପୋଲିସ ଆର୍ମିର ଆବଶ୍ୟକତା ରହିଛି ନିଜର ସୁରକ୍ଷା ଦୃଷ୍ଟିରେ ହଉ ନିଜ ଦେଶର ଶାନ୍ତି ସ୍ଥିରତା ବଜାୟ ରଖିବା ପାଇଁ ହଉ ନିଜର ମିଲିଟାରୀ ଷ୍ଟାବିଲିଟି ରକ୍ଷା କରିବା ପାଇଁ ହଉ ମିଲିଟାରୀର ଆବଶ୍ୟକତା ରହିଛି ଚିଫ ଏକ୍ଜିକ୍ୟୁଟିଭ ବା ଜଣେ ଅଥରିଟି ମିଲିଟାରୀ ପାୱାର ମାଧ୍ୟମରେ ଦେଶର ଶାନ୍ତି ସ୍ଥିରତା ବଜାୟ ରଖିବା ସହିତ ବିଦେଶର ଶତ୍ରୁକୁ ଦେଶ ମଧ୍ୟ ପ୍ରବେଶ ନ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ଚେଷ୍ଟା କରିଥାଏ. The next point, causes of military intervention. What is the causes of military intervention? First one, the nature of the military. Nature of the military. The reasons for the military intervention in politics are not for to seek. Firstly, military interventions in active policies take place owing to the basic dissatisfaction of prism in the military tends to the entertain about civilian society and the high values in places on the order and discipline. Armed forces are known for their discipline, sense duty. If one asks the fact that the army can construct its own discipline and alleged sense of the duty to the selfness and a leak of the efforts that often see in the civilian life, particularly among the politicians, and the critical fact that the army has the necessary weapons to overthrow a regime. Next point, nature of the civil society and the military role. Military interventions in politics is dependent on the norms and values upheld by a particular political regime. The military is unlikely to object to the liberal and democratic norms, while it may be inimical to the radical norms. Thus, we find that in the 19th century, Europe, many regions slowly became more liberal and democratic on the basis of the maintenance of the monarchy, to which the military mentioned loyal rather than to the new values. The regime rested on due legitimacy, in which links between the military and the rest of the political system were limited and tends to the pass through the monarch. In some societies, the military is the ultimate storehouse of effective deadly force militaries, to say nothing or armed citizens. The next point is character and characteristics of the military regime. Basically, the army either controls the state directly or acts as the essential tool in a civilian regime. Depending upon the nature and degree of control, the military regimes can be classified as follows. Firstly, those states where the military has undertaken by corps and runs the affairs of the directly or by being transformed into the presidential system. Presidential system where offers retain the balance of power, like Egypt, Syria, Iraq, Algeria, Pakistan, ये सब देश गुड़िकर होता है. Secondly, the traditional states where the military is the main support of the dynastic regime, ଯେମିତିକା ସାଉଦି ଆରେବିଆ, ଜୋର୍ଡାନ, ମର୍କୋ, ଗୋଲ୍ଫ ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍ ଗୁଡିକ. Thirdly, the democratic states where the military is clearly controlled by the civilian authorities. Example, Israel, Turkey. तो यही सब देश गुड़िकरे मिलिटारी मानकर भूमिका रही थाए. Military regimes can be best understood by the constructing them from the democratic form of government. Democracy as the form of government has been defined in the terms of sources of authority for government, purposes served by the government, and procedures for the constituting government. Thus, military interventions in politics are seen as anti-democratic and repressive. In the 1960s, the perception tended to the change, and theories were presented viewing the military as a progressive force that would ascertain social and political change and lead third world stem from the backwardness to modernity. Military interventions are characterized by the excessive use of force. The nature of a military regimes encourages extreme reliance of force and supports and suppression secret power secret power structures result in the social tensions, radical shift in the state politics following change in the leadership, and the weakening of the professionalism of the military in a combatant force. Military adventurism is another feature of this regime. A large proportion of national resources have been diverted into unproductive military build up rather than improving the lot of the poor. The military promotes its own corporate self-interest by aligning itself with, with conservative social forces. The military officers are challenged by the rise of new centers of power businessmen, professionals, entrepreneurs, academics, and technocrats. The next point is United States and of America. Military intervention in USA. In 1782, just after the Revolution War 1775 to 1781, certain officers who felt that they had received the inadequate pay for the wartime services contemplated military revolt against the civilian government. But General George Washington refused to support their military mutiny, calling instead of the disarmament of the army and continuing loyalty to the civilian government. ଆମେରିକାରେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ମିଲିଟାରୀ ଚିଫ୍ ଜର୍ଜ ୱାଶିଂଟନ ଆର୍ମି ମାନଙ୍କୁ ନେଇ ଯୁଦ୍ଧ କରିଥିଲେ ଓ ଆମେରିକା ସ୍ୱାଧୀନତା ପ୍ରାପ୍ତ କରିଥିଲେ, ସେ ଚାହିଁଥିଲେ ମିଲିଟାରୀ ଶାସନ କରିପାରିଥାନ୍ତେ, କିନ୍ତୁ ସେ ମିଲିଟାରୀ ଶାସନକୁ ପ୍ରତ୍ୟାଖ୍ୟାନ କରି ସିଭିଲିଆନ ଗଭର୍ଣ୍ଣମେଣ୍ଟ ପ୍ରତିଷ୍ଠା କରିଥିଲେ, ଯାହା ହେଉଛି ଏକ ଡେମୋକ୍ରାଟିକ ଗଭର୍ଣ୍ଣମେଣ୍ଟ. The successful defense of the American colonies during the colonial era strengthened local confidence that a militia or volunteers suffered and that a standing army was not necessary to ensure security. Colonial legislature, which possessed the power of the purse, proved effective in the preserving control over military matters and researching the English crown. These bodies became the principal exponents of American ideas about the dangers of permanent military organizations, and they were the main advocates of the civilian constitution of the military. Now going to about the Pakistan. Pakistan is our neighboring country. In Pakistan, though army is instrumental in running the state affairs, which controls everything, including all the national resources. The period from 1938 to 1958 to 1969 was a period of a military dictatorship under the leadership of General Ayub Khan. While up to 1962, he ruled with the corporation from the bureaucracy and army. In 1962, he introduced the quasi-constitutional and civil regime in which political parties were rejuvenated with the next landmark in the political history of Pakistan was handing over the power to General Ayub Khan in 1969, when Ayub Khan roles as the purely military role in which senior bureaucrats were associated with it. General Ayub Khan became the CMLA and operated with the collective leadership of army generals. Like that, in 1999, in the form of the corps under the leadership of General Parvez Musharraf. General Parvez Musharraf, the chief army of the Pakistan. The army has been causing frequent interruption in the democratic process in Pakistan. Musharraf's material law is the last such attempt which derailed democratic process, the seed of which had been shown by the same army way back in 1954 with the imposition of the first military law in the country. ପାକିସ୍ତାନ ମଧ୍ୟ ବାରମ୍ବାର ମିଲିଟାରୀ ଶାସନ ଦେଖିବାକୁ ମିଳିଥାଏ। ତ ଗଣତାନ୍ତ୍ରିକ ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ର ହେଲେ ମଧ୍ୟ ମିଲିଟାରୀ ଭୂମିକା ମଧ୍ୟ ବହୁତ ଆବଶ୍ୟକତା ଅଛି। ମିଲିଟାରୀ ପୋଲିସ ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ର ସୁରକ୍ଷା କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ପାକିସ୍ତାନ କେସ୍ ଆମେ ଦେଖିବା, ଯେତେବେଳେ ସରକାର ଶାସନ କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ବିଫଳ ହେଉଛନ୍ତି, ବିଶେଷ କରି ଭାରତ ପାକିସ୍ତାନ ମଧ୍ୟରେ ସର୍ବଦା ଶତ୍ରୁର ସମ୍ପର୍କ। ଯେ ମନ୍ତ୍ରୀ ହେବ ସେ ଭାରତ ବିରୁଦ୍ଧରେ ଯଦି ସ୍ଲୋଗାନ ଦେଇପାରିବ, ଭାରତ ସହିତ ଯୁଦ୍ଧ କରିପାରିବ, ସେ ତାର ପ୍ରକୃତ ପାକିସ୍ତାନୀ ବୋଲି କୁହାଯାଏ। ଯଦି ଏଥିରେ ବିଫଳ ହୁଏ ତେବେ ପାକିସ୍ତାନ ସେନା ତାକୁ ହଟେଇକି ଶାସନ ନିଜ ହାତକୁ ନେଇଥାଏ। The conclusion of the military roles. The partition of the military in politics is not seen as a positive phenomenon. It is usually restricted to the national security and for a secondary role in a nation in case of an emergency. A number of countries experienced a tendency during the 1960s and 1970s of a direct military intervention, especially in Latin American countries. We can give the characteristics of the military government as excessive use of force, military adventurism, promotion of the own purpose, self-interest, and hence suppressions of rights, liberty, and equalities of citizens. The spread of democratization of the 1970 and 1980 led to the withdrawal of military forms politics. Today, all nations give top priority to the economic goals, thus constraining the military's roles. Higher level of education and modernization also put pressure upon the government to respond to the popular demands. ପାକିସ୍ତାନ ରେ ଆର୍ମି ପାଇଁ ଅଧିକ ଖର୍ଚ୍ଚ ହେଉଥିବା ବେଳେ ଦେଶର ଶିକ୍ଷା ସ୍ୱାସ୍ଥ୍ୟ ପାଇଁ କମ ଖର୍ଚ୍ଚ ହୋଇଥାଏ, କିନ୍ତୁ ଭାରତ ଭଳି ଦେଶରେ ଆର୍ମି ଯେତିକି ଖର୍ଚ୍ଚ ହୁଏ ଅଧିକ ଗୁରୁତ୍ୱ ଦିଆଯାଇଥାଏ ଯେ ନାଗରିକ ମାନଙ୍କର ଶିକ୍ଷା, ସ୍ୱାସ୍ଥ୍ୟ, ସାମାଜିକ ସ୍ଥିତି ଅବସ୍ଥା ବା political stability ଉପରେ ଗୁରୁତ୍ୱ ଦିଆଯାଇଥାଏ. There are two different between the India and Pakistan about the political regime. Now unit 21 already finished. I am going to the another unity 22 federalism patterns and trends. Federalism अर्थ है संघीय राष्ट्र. संघीय मीन्स केंद्र रे केंद्र सरकार, राज्य रे राज्य सरकार. केंद्र सरकार अधीन रे राज्य सरकार रही थांती. केंद्र सरकार राज्य सरकार मानू क्षमता अर्पण करिथांती. निज निज परिसर मध्य शासन करिथांती. बेसिक फीचर होची जे डुअल गवर्नमेंट बाय डुअल गवर्नमेंट, सिंगल सिटीजनशिप, independent into impartial judicial system, bicameralism house, etc. Federalism is one of the most important and dynamic aspect of discourse is in the political sphere of democratic governance and unity. It is basically intended in create of the sustain a unity polity and the coherent society in multicultural and diverse societal realities. Federalism is not a descriptive but normative term then advocates multi-layer governments combining elements of a self-rule and a shared rule. It is permitted upon the expectations and rationality of promoting unity in the diversity by accommodating, preserving, and representing distinct identities within a larger political union. In the opinion of the Ronald L. West, that the essence of federalism as a normative principle is the perpetuation of both union and non-culturalization at the same time. In other words, federalism aims at achieving some degree of political integration based on the wisdom of diversities to the comprise upon the common goal sustaining unity. Debating the terms and its utility. Debating, the next point is debating the term and its utility. The word federalism as a political doctrine of political management has never been free from its controversial interpretations. It seems to be eligible for both traditional and modern societies as it exists in both. It is sometimes taken the exclusively liberal and sometimes quite accommodative. On the one hand, federalism is focused on the policy of territorial unity. On the other, its logical territorial interpretation also implies the greater need for the relevance to the societal needs. Federalism seems to be the comprehensive and inclusive than it's generally described. The whole of the federalism is based on the liberal premise of a modern society in which individuality and civic community from the basis of the comprises and relationship among the persons and group of the achieving highest form of political integration. Federalism does not entertain traditional kind of the group of rights based pluralism, but rather push traditional pluralism. Therefore, federalism gives an impressions of a success of being territorial in political prescriptions, which better served the interest of a modern society. People having linguistic and religious harmonically with territorially were identified as the sub-national federal units which share powers with the federal government under the principles of a self-rule and share rules in Europe. Example, USA, Canada, India, they are the federal country. Patents of the federalism. Next point, patents of the federalism. Possibly one can take up the subject of the pattern of federalism at the three levels: intended crisis, internal cost, broad spectrum for non-unity for of the governance, and a country-specific pattern of the federal polity. Meaningful study of the federalism necessitated efforts to the look of the federal political system and political process, which are the concerned with the organizing, governing constitutionally in a certain way, and then to live up to the constitutional Denmark. However, it is the important the mention that some politics can be identified as hybrids incorporating features of the different political experience in some determination like Canada, Malaysia, South Africa, India, and Pakistan. The federal governments have overriding powers over the constituent units. They have been labeled as quasi-federation on the different occasion of their labelment of their development. The next point is the unions. Unions means center. Unions are polities. Unions are polities that we are consciously and deliberately united or compounded out of what we are formally separate identities, either by consent of force in order to preserve integrity of constituent unity, which in return respect their respecting integrates exclusively through the common organs of the general government rather than through their government structures. New Zealand and Lebanon are example. Belgium prior to the becoming a federations and sound federal principles for the unity of Fleming and Wallons. Next point, constitution. The constitutional determination of unity states as the ancient device has appeared in the different forms. The Netherlands Union of the originated provinces provide the considerable devolution to the provinces and their multi-parties. It decentralized unitary states, local government, able constitutional governments for the considerable autonomy in some areas, but local powers are governed by the central government. The next point is leagues. Leagues present a combined effort of entirely independent politics in some lasting way to the managed by the common secretariat rather than the government. Members can be voluntarily withdraw from the league. ଲିଗ୍ରେ କ'ଣ ହୁଏ ସମସ୍ତେ ମିଳିତ ଭାବରେ ସତପ୍ରଭୁତା ଭାବେ ଜଡ଼ିତ ଥାନ୍ତି। ଆବଶ୍ୟକ ବେଳେ ମେମ୍ବର ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରମାନେ ଲିଗ୍ରୁ ମଧ୍ୟ ଓହରି ଯାଇପାରନ୍ତି। ଲୋକାଲ ଆଣ୍ଡ ନନ୍ ଗଭର୍ଣ୍ଣମେଣ୍ଟାଲ ଫେଡେରାଲିଜମ is applied on the local plan and the growing in a number and scope. Federalism in they are introduced as the solution to look into the local issues. The Canada experiment of the popularly in oriented the good examples of the use of federal principles and arrangements. The Indian experiment of the strengthening local self-government by the enactment under 73rd and 74 constitutional amendments can be reasonably brought in the category of local federalism. संघीय राष्ट्र कथा जदि आमे देखिबा भारत होची एक संघीय राष्ट्र इंडिया जे फेडरल कंट्री एटी द्वैत सरकार डुअल गवर्नमेंट रही केंद्र रे केंद्र सरकार आउ राज्य रे राज्य सरकार अछन केंद्र और राज्य सरकार मध्य रे कोनोसी प्रॉब्लम सृष्टि न होआ पाई सेमानक मध्य रे क्षमतार बंटन करा जाय देयर आर 3 subject list between the center and the state. First la union list 97 subjects. Second state list 62 subjects. Third one is the concurrent list 42 subjects distribution among the center and state. तेणु केंद्र और राज्य मध्य झगड़ा न लागिबा पाई क्षमता बा विषय वस्तु बंटन करा प्रत्येक सरकार निज निज मध्य दिया क्षमता को उपभोग करेंगे आईन प्रणयन करेंगे और शासन मध्य करेंगे कौन सी सरकार अन्य एक सरकार उपरे प्रभाव विस्तार करें ना उक्त बंटा जाइए विषय वस्तु उपरे अन्य सरकार हस्तक्षेप करें ना जदि कौन सी कारण केंद्र और राज्य मध्य झगड़ा हुए निश्चित भाव में डेफिनेटली केंद्र सरकार आईन बा केंद्र सरकार कथा बलवत्तर रही था यही दृष्टि फेडरलिज्म क्षेत्र में कौन सी राष्ट्र चाहिए केंद्र सरकार ठू अलग हो पारे ना केंद्र सरकार अधीन यही राष्ट्र गुड़िक राज्य गुड़िक कार्य कर भारत में बर्तमान 29 स्टेट केंद्र सरकार अधीन 29 स्टेट कार्य करुछंती ए स्टेट गुड़िक निजस्व सरकार थिले मध्य सेमाने स्वाधीन नुहंती एमानक पाखर कौन सार्वभौमत्व क्षमता नाई तेणु सेमाने भारत सरकार अधीन भारत सरकार अधीनस्थ होई कार्य करिथांती भारतर पार्लियामेंट को सम्मान मध्य देइथांती आवश्यक स्थले भारतर पार्लियामेंट राज्य सरकार आईन प्रणयन करिथाय और कार्य करिथाय द लास्ट पॉइंट समरी ऑफ द फेडरलिज्म Federalism is intended to create and sustain a united policy and a coherent society in multicultural and diverse societal realities. It is a normative term which advocates multi-layered government combining elements of the self-rule and shared rule accommodating and representing distinct identities with a large political union. Federalism is supposed to have the attributes of establishing a rational and democratic relationship between justice and power, thus retaining the urge for the unity along with the respect of ethnic identity. On the fundamental characteristics of federations is the distribution of power between two or more order of the governments. The specific form of the allocation of a distribution of the powers varies in relation to the underlying degrees of the kinds of common interest. ତେଣୁ ଫେଡେରାଲ ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍ କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ଆମେ ଦେଖିବା ଆମେରିକା ଇଣ୍ଡିଆ କାନାଡା ଇଟ୍ ଇଜ ଏ ବେଷ୍ଟ ଏକ୍ସାମ୍ପଲ ଅଫ ଫେଡେରାଲିଜମ. Okay, dear student, the class is over. Today we are completed 22 unity already completed. I have only one class, so that class I will cover 8 units. Remaining 8 units will cover that last class. Thank you everyone. Today class is over. Thank you everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So many thanks to all of you. We will meet in the next class.
Hello.